Hello and welcome to The Pledge. There was a feline of confusion at a press conference in Pakistan this week as the hapless human responsible for filming a politician's press conference accidentally switched on the cat filter while live streaming the offence on Facebook. Yeah. Now, it was a number of minutes before the mistake was rectified, something that we on The Pledge would never be as careless as to let happen. Coming up on the programme, Rachel argues a step up for one isn't good for all, Michelle goes all northern, and Trevor wants 16-year-olds off city streets. But first, it's Nick.
Now, remind me, Trevor, what's that golden rule about telling jokes?
Oh, you mean the secret of great comedy?
Timing! That's right, and that's precisely where we should file the row over the so-called gag from the so-called comic Joe Brand concerning acid attacks on politicians. Miss Brand, who I find about as funny as a troubling case of piles, chose to seek laughs by suggesting that instead of milkshakes, we should be throwing battery acid over certain political figures. And it's 99% certain she meant Nigel Farage. This is where the timing comes in. 5 years ago, this joke was lame and lacklustre, but allowable. 3 years ago, almost to the day, the landscape changed when a British politician was assassinated on the streets of West Yorkshire. There is now a dangerous toxicity and malevolence in the air. It falls to broadcasters, comics and politicians to try to calm down this frenzied anger. The BBC, which broadcast this joke 20 days after it was taped, is shameful in its lack of action. And just a warning, this debate contains language which some viewers might find offensive.
Nick, I'm surprised at you. OK, not a great joke, but it's a bit rich coming from a former Sun columnist in the era of Gotcha and Freddie Starr ate my hamster to be having a go at Joe Brand over this. Let me declare an interest. I'm chair of something called Index on Censorship, which is a global campaign for freedom of expression. And that's just part of the great British tradition of how we get things changed. Invective, insult, argument. Back in 1729, the great satirist Jonathan Swift wrote Gulliver's Travels, wrote an essay called A Modest Proposal, and what he proposed was that poor people should sell their children, their babies, to rich people so that they wouldn't have to be burdened by them and rich people would have a new source of nourishment. Now, this is shocking and it's disgusting, but it drew attention to the lamentable levels of poverty. Now, what you're saying, I'm really surprised at you. It's taking us into the territory where nobody is allowed to shock, nobody is allowed to say things are not as they should be, and that I am going to shock you out of complacency.
My central point is, it was fine until someone did actually kill an MP. That is the difference. I don't know. I hear what you say. The Sun was 35 years ago because of events 3 years ago, almost to the day. I think it's changed. Back to you in a moment, Rachel.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think one of the most offensive things in your intro was that you don't think Joe Brand is funny. I think she's hilarious. I think she has a style of humour that, you know, it kind of ambushes you. It takes a handbrake turn down a dark alley. I think she's brilliant. But there are two things that go on with comedy. One of them is context, and the second one is whether you punch up or you punch down. Now, for a little bit of context, let's just have a look at something that Tom Walker said. He is better known as Jonathan Pye.
You have to remember when these sorts of incidents happen, and they're coming up more and more in this sort of rather puritanical age that we seem to be entering, people seem to willfully forget intent and context, all right? So let's look at the context. If you listen to the clip, the context is there for you. People laugh at it, right? It's clearly a joke. Did Joe Brand intend for someone to throw acid on a politician's face? And if you really believe that she wanted that she was really inciting that, then I think you're probably willfully misinterpreting the context with which she said it.
See, I think that joke was willfully misinterpreted. You know, it was that outrage moment that seems to happen so often in this country lately. It was very, very clear in the context of the joke, and she actually said afterwards... that she was joking, that she didn't mean it.
And she has subsequently apologised.
And so for anyone to misinterpret that, you are doing so deliberately.
I have no brief for Jo Brand, by the way, and she complained that a long time ago I refused to give her a job, which is true. But I think, to be fair to her, we should maybe listen to what she said and how she said it, because I think that's to your point, Rachel.
Okay.
Certain unpleasant characters are being thrown to the fore, and they're very, very easy to hate. And I'm kind of thinking, why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid? That's just me, and it's all right. I'm not going to do it. It's purely a fantasy, but I think milkshakes are pathetic. I honestly do.
Jo Brand on Radio 4 there. Majid, we've not got you involved.
Yes, I just want to tell you what the BBC said. If we have a look, it says that in their defence, they said, Heresy is a long-running comedy programme where panellists often say things which are deliberately provocative and go against societal norms but are not intended to be taken seriously. We carefully considered the programme before broadcast. It was never intended to encourage or condone violence, and it does not do so. But we have noted the strong reaction to it. And then, of course, in that age-old, tried and tested line, we regret any offence we have caused. So what I'm surprised
I just want to know what you say about Jo Brand, though, Majid.
Yeah,
Should that gag have aired?
Well, no, I didn't find the joke funny. I don't think she should have cracked the joke, but I don't believe certainly don't believe that she should have been prosecuted for it.
No, I agree with that.
And I think
should the BBC have cut it?
Well, they edited that programme. It should not have been included.
Precisely, so we're on the same...
Once
briefly,
it was aired,
yeah.
of course, I don't believe in censorship once a decision's been made.
OK, Michelle, sorry, we haven't got you in soon.
Well, I agree with you entirely, although I must make a very important disclosure. I've never had a terrible case of piles, so I can't compare Jo Brand's level of humour to that.
You've missed out.
I know.
It's a bum note, hasn't it?
With that exception, I don't think what she said was a joke in any way, shape or form. I think it was an unacceptable comment. I fail to understand, in any context, in any intention, how throwing acid in someone's face could even be remotely amusing. And there's been 2,000 acid attacks over the last 3 years in this country. Throwing acid at somebody has become more and more of a thing. If you don't like them, if you want to rob them, if you want to disagree with them, whatever it is, it's now become some form of norm to throw acid on people, which I think is unacceptable.
She didn't throw acid at anybody.
No, I know she didn't,
should.
but she referenced it in a jerky context. And just to be clear,
this is ridiculous now.
No, it's
this
not.
is ridiculous. There are all sorts of things now. We cannot now refer to unpleasant behaviour in case it encourages somebody. Even if what we're saying is this unpleasant behaviour is unacceptable.
Let's listen to a lady who's had acid thrown in her face as well and see her perspective on this. This is a lady called Sophie Hall. And what she's saying here, she spoke to the Daily Mirror. What she's saying is that Jo should never have joked about it in the first place because it's not a joking matter. There are people out there who've suffered before, and for her to make a remark like that is just so upsetting. Jo should go to a burns unit and see what it does and see if she can make a joke about it afterwards, after seeing the trauma people have gone through. So I don't agree that this was in any way, shape or form a joke.
Just one from me then, Majid. I mean, so I'm slightly... Trevor, until the politician got murdered, I was with you. I just think until we can dial down the anger that's abroad, and whether it's Extinction Rebellion, whether it's we should leave or we should remain, there's such anger that we have to be aware of. Once that dissipates...
Agreed.
Back to your...
In the sense that Michelle's just raised, I mean, I think the victim of acid attack there would be saying that was also punching down, for example, in her view. That happens particularly in my community. It's a very, very serious problem. Now, I'm not saying, to repeat, that she shouldn't have been, that she should have been somehow punished for the joke, but I'm saying that there's a serious lack of consistency in all of this.
You know, the lack of consistency, you know, when Jo Cox was tragically murdered, you know, she was murdered by someone who was a far-right extremist who had believed one of the reasons that he singled her out was because she was pro-immigration. If we're going to be consistent, then let's be consistent about not attacking immigration in our national conversation to such an extent that breeds far-right extremism.
But this is
you're asking
ridiculous.
for consistency,
This is ridiculous.
but you're not prepared to follow it yourself.
This is ridiculous, Nick. Since I was 6 years old, people have made wog jokes in front of me and at me. Up until this year, do I say that everybody who does that needs to get sacked? No, that's ridiculous.
I've never said
and secondly, this is the more important point. Yeah. What you guys seem to be saying, and I think it's unfortunate to bring in the experience of somebody who has had something really ghastly happen to them. In order to say that a comedian... I mean, these people are not serious people. Let's not start treating entertainers like they matter.
But they have audiences, Trevor.
Yeah, but so do you, Nick.
Yeah.
The point is, stop.
And that's why on my radio show, and Magic's done so, we're trying to tile down
but
the
stop
anger.
treating the jester as if the jester is the king. The more you do that, the more you make them important, and the more you make this kind of thing the issue every time it happens. And what is now happening is that people are increasingly not able to express a point of view. And then we get arguments about how boring was that debate, because they're all careful, they're also not saying anything that they really mean. Now, what do you want? Do you want to be in a liberal democracy, or do you want to be in North Korea?